This is Carla Kettner, executive producer and writer of episode 604, The Pawnbrokers. You're listening to the Blacklist Exposed on Golden Spiral Media.
In this jungle, I am the lion after all. Welcome to the award-winning Blacklist Exposed podcast. I'm Agent Troy Heinrichs.
And I am Special Agent Rory, and I don't know about you, but I always feed my pet rat Pimento Loaf. Thanks for joining us once again as we discuss numbers 146 and 147 on the Blacklist, The Pawnbrokers, written by Carla Kettner and directed by Lynn Edding. Show notes and other intel for this episode of the Blacklist Exposed can be found at theblacklistexposed.com.
I just want to say quickly, thanks to Rory for filling in this week. Aaron will be back in 2 weeks because there is no Blacklist next week. Sad that we already have a preemption.
Waited so long for it. I was hoping it would just be straight through, but hey, take a week if it's worth it.
Which actually worked out well because I'm actually at a wedding next weekend as well. So Blacklist gods smile upon us.
They look down on you.
All right. Well, in this episode, we'll cover off on our profiling question from last week with thoughts from all of you. We'll dig deep into this week's case profile. Then we will hear what you all thought of this week's episode in Special Agent Intel. Remember, if you are enjoying the podcast and have a blast here this week, be sure to toss us a few bucks in the hat and support us on Patreon. That's Patreon, patreon.com/theblacklistgsm. Or you can just find the Phil the Fedora icon on our website. That's theblacklistexposed.com.
With that, let's see how you answered last week's profiling question. Does Red need the pharmacist for himself or someone else? 80% said someone else.
Sheila and Candace also chimed in and said they think that it's a cure for Josephine. That was an interesting one.
Yeah, I didn't think of that one at all. Sabine, Barbara, Dee Dee, and Patrick all say Katerina.
With the assumption, obviously, that Katerina's still alive.
Yes, and not Red.
Raymond Renting. Yeah. Anita, Michelle, Annalise, Monica, and Marta think it's for Liz, and specifically maybe to restore her memories.
Well, you figured somebody was going to touch on that at some point. Ellen says Kirk.
Yep. we all kind of think that's where Kirk was as for last week. And apparently George and Deborah all think that Agnes is the one that needs the cure. And I thought we just didn't have to talk about Agnes anymore. But apparently George and Deborah still think Agnes is a thing.
Out of sight, out of mind. But Wendy said, is it possible that whatever the pharmacist is working on is for Red personally? Back in the episode when Red was poisoned, it was designed to attack those whose health was already compromised. And seemingly Red had a health issue that Kaplan knew about. Dembe had asked if Red's significant investment, quote unquote, was still in progress. So I'm thinking it may not be a monetary contribution, but a something or someone maybe. Very interesting. That took a lot of thought.
It did, yeah.
Yeah, if you didn't come up with it.
Man, that's a really good point.
It is. So now for our next profiling question. Fill in the timeline. What happens between Christmas of 1990 and October of 1991?
Yeah, we'll have to talk about those dates this week for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my gosh. It just threw the internet in a tizzy.
I was laughing, too, because when they pull out the folder and they look at it, the left picture, I thought it was Abraham Lincoln. I was like, where's his hat?
Be excellent to each other.
A house divided cannot stand.
All right, let's party on, dudes. All right, well, thanks to all those that answered this week. Now, before these cameras out here don't see us working, let's get to this week's case profile. Well, the episode this week is The Pawnbrokers. Nothing says love more than a couple who run a pawn shop. But they just don't deal in the usual jewels and electronics that you would see. No. Rod and Delaine Uhlman, the pawnbrokers themselves, deal in secrets and hot lead. If you trade in your item for cash, you have 30 days to buy your item back. Otherwise, it hits the open market. Cross them, however, and Delaine takes you out.
One shot.
One shot only. What did you think of the Uhlmans? Is this a couple that, had Delaine lived, would you go to their house and have dinner?
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple that you look at them, they're like, oh, they're just like this old mom and pop shop, or whatever. And then she just blasts them with hot lead. And it's like, okay, I'll get the gas. Just burn them.
I love that they're just so comfortable in their marriage after all this time that they can like read each other's thoughts. Like, okay, well, I know you wanted to burn the car afterwards, so I'm all good. I already packed the hydrogen fuel in order to make sure we had this just for this rare occasion.
It's so funny, the timeline of like when she was telling Samar like how they progressed. It's like, well, we used to check, on the bicycles that came in, and then it was, C4, and now it's murder and burning people alive, burning people dead. Like, what?
But he's still watching out for, because they are in the DC area. So at least the husband is looking out for the wife, because with a car of that age, you would think that they have to keep the hydrogen fuel in the back, not just because they want to burn other cars down, but because it works for like extra weight in the back during winter. So they're not sliding around on the snow.
It was like the family truckster out of like Vegas or Christmas Vacation.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah, the Griswolds. Yeah. Well, it does turn out that they came into possession of a way to break some Chinese-coded transmissions, so the task force is tasked by the NSA to get it back as they race against the clock against the local Chinese consulate. What do you think of this concept of the Chinese coming in as a player in the Blacklist universe?
I kind of thought that my first thought was that it's really fun because it's kind of ripped out of the news, with everything that's going on in the real world, between us and China. So I kind of thought it was fun that they brought this in, with it, and especially stealing intel and classified documents and things like that. Wouldn't surprise me if, that stuff is going on, because that kind of ties to Russia, thing.
Well, and it also goes back to that lady from the second episode of the season that had hired the Corsican to do have the bomb for the Turkish ambassador. So I'm wondering if she works inside of our government as well, and how shady is the U.S. government? I mean, not that we know it isn't shady in real life, but right. In this case, like, how many players are in the government doing shady things? Do we have like a new cabal kind of coming onto the scene?
That was exactly where I went with it, because I was like, okay, we already had the cabal, so we already know the government is compromised in that sense, and we haven't touched on any of the cabal stuff, since Hitchen's been gone, that Red was supposed to be in charge of the cabal. So it's interesting now that, okay, so there's more bad actors, involved in our government, and they're turning out to working for other governments, not just their own entities.
But then we have Red. He gets acquainted to his new lifestyle in the bunker, as they called it, making friends with a new character in Vontae Jones that John mentioned in his interview to start the season. Turns out that Red knows a few people on the inside, and one of them is not so happy to see him. Red and this guy, Baldomero, throw verbal as well as physical jabs at each other, but in the end, it is Red winning this criminal battle of wits with a rope-a-dope Baldomero never saw coming.
Don't they know by now you can't mess with Red? Like, you would think they know this already.
Were you nervous, though? I mean, he got beat pretty bad in that opening sequence. I was like, man, they're going to really mess up Red's face.
Yeah, I thought at first, when he's beating him, I'm like, oh, man, he's got no back. He's an old man in prison. And then I was like, it wouldn't surprise me if this is all part of his plan. Because it's Red.
I thought so, too, because I'm thinking maybe he did it in a way so that Liz might feel sympathy for him in a way.
It's possible. There's something going on. It's been floated all season that they're dynamic back and forth. We'll get to it later about, does Red really know that Liz is the one who turned him in? But going with it, it's Red. He knows everything. Their little quips back and forth have shown that he knows that she knows,
That's what I say. I still go back to that sheriff in that first episode. like I swear Red has an inkling that something is going on, because the way he just talks to her makes it think like, okay, I know you turned me in because you're the only one that knew I was going to the pretzel cart. But he's playing off really, really well, like he doesn't know.
Exactly. I mean, it reminded me like of the Honeymooners. It's like, I know that you know that I know that you know. It's like they're just going back and forth, and you're like, okay, they have to know at this point. This is a coded conversation that both of them have the code for.
Well, then, lastly, Jennifer is back this week after taking a week off, and she returns with her convenient friend, Buck, that can hack data to find out when Red officially met Dr. Kohler back in 1991. So along with her sister, Liz is now pursuing a patient of Kohler's who may have crossed paths with our famously criminally masked man. Glad to see Jennifer back, and what do you think she's up to?
You don't have a hacker on your payroll? I thought we all do.
I mean, I do a really bad job on my bushes. I mean, I'm a hacker that way, but
I don't know. Like Jennifer, there's something about her that just doesn't sit right with me. She's unhinged, as I like to call her. And you could see, and I think it was done intentionally this week. If you saw her outfit, it was like she was all disheveled. Like half of it was tucked in, the rest wasn't. She was just a hot mess.
Well, and she wants to get to the bottom of it too. She's just running around like, you got to do something. We got to figure this out. Come on, we got to. She's so amped. She
wants Red dead. She wants payback for Garvey. I don't think she really cares about everything else that's going on. She just wants Red dead. She wants to know the truth, but she wants him gone.
Yeah, which I think will be to her demise.
As always.
Well, at this point in the show, we always go into the characters and we talk about the music first. Rory, why don't you tell us, what are a few of the songs we heard this week?
Well, as Red enters prison life, surveying his new surroundings, we hear classic from Delta Ray, Bottom of the River. Later, as Red learns how to woo his new pet rat, we hear My One and Only, performed by Albert Leonard, Ty Artis, and Noah Jackson. When Dembe meets up with the new version of Mr. Jingles, we hear Funky Flight by Inside Tracks. And then as Balderramo gets shoved in the bathroom, we hear All Eyes on You by Robbie Neville playing inside the Blue Lounge. And then the best scene at the end, when Red's strutting triumphantly through the prison, we hear Watch That Man by Lee Fields.
Yeah, as always, you can hear these great songs and all of the Blacklist stuff from all previous seasons on the Blacklist playlists. You can visit Spotify or Apple Music. Just look for the section on the website titled Music of the Blacklist, and we'll have the links there at theblacklistexposed.com. Even have links that you can buy Dave Porter's album as well, who does all of the non-singing songs, I guess we'll call it.
The instrumentals.
All right, well, let's run down the characters then for Jennifer. So she has this guy named Buck who's a hacker, and apparently she's a fan of Beyonce.
Yeah, I thought that was good that they included that. And I was thinking, okay, so at the end when he came back with actually some intel, is he going to get to see Beyonce after all?
This is a good point. And who's got time to go see the Beyonce concert? We're trying to track this guy down before Red gets out of jail.
Right. But that's what I was saying before, that something about her makes me nervous because she's unhinged and wants revenge. She's a hot mess, but I don't like how they're showing Liz's character to be so easily manipulated by everyone. Like, it was one thing when Red's able to do it, but now Jennifer has manipulated her into making the call, doing further than she wanted to go. Then she felt bad for Red, but, Jen brought her back. And I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like how Liz is so gullible. She's an FBI agent. Come on.
Maybe that's her play, though. Red's always the one that's, oh, hey, you're going to do this and you're going to do that. And he's kind of already one step ahead the whole time. Maybe this is her shtick. Maybe this is the way that she's kind of wooing Jennifer into thinking that, like, oh, Jennifer needs me. Jennifer wants me to do this stuff. But in the end, Liz is actually going to double cross Jennifer in the end.
I mean, that's hopefully where it goes, because I don't like seeing Liz in the middle of this, because I don't know. Maybe she did, like, quote unquote father like daughter. But I just don't like Jennifer's character at all. There's something off about her. She needs meds.
I'm sure you can get some of those in prison.
I'm sure.
And there's a guy who can probably get that for you. Vontae Jones, he's got your back. What do you think of the new addition to Red Syndicate?
Oh, I loved him. He has that Urkel quality to him, which is like perfect, because he just seems like that's not the guy you would have like in Red's crew. So I think he's perfect sidekick for him. But what is he in for? Like, they never said what he was in for. It's going to turn out that he's got something that'll work out for Red, some kind of special skill, like Liam Neeson.
Well, and kudos to him. They're doing the fight with Baldomero, and Baldomero gets pushed towards Vontae, and Vontae actually steps in and trips him. I thought that was really bold for Vontae. Why are you getting involved, dude? You're going to get shivved the next time around. He
told Red he's got his back, but it was funny too, because he trips him, and then the first thing he does is like, "Oh crap, what did I do?" And he backs up.
Yeah,
but do you think Red will wind up getting him out when Red gets out?
Yeah, I think for sure Red's going to do something there in order to help out Vontae. Vontae seems like such a nice kid, and he's probably just misunderstood or whatever happened with him. So part of the deal maybe it might be, hey, if you get me out, you also got to get Vontae out. He really didn't do anything. So I like the kid. I think it's fun. I think it's going to be interesting to see him run and do errands inside the prison while Dembe's running champagne bottles back and forth through the pipe outside.
Yeah, that was the interesting part too about him was like it was a great character addition, but he like immediately, for whatever reason, like I said, Red always has a reason for what he does. He immediately gravitated to him, and the kid immediately was just like, "Okay, I'm yours," kind of thing.
Well, yeah, he had to. I mean, he knew who he was.
Yeah, I mean, it's one meal and one slice of pimento loaf, and they're like, okay, I guess I'm your new body man.
Right. Well, Dembe, he's a genie in a bottle, apparently. He's making all of Red's dreams come true. What do you think of this system of pulling the wire through the pole? Don't you think somebody would see that after a while? Like this, hey, who's this African-American gentleman that keeps coming up to the prison every day?
Right? Do you have to rub him the right way?
He's got the nice dome, on the top. So,
yeah, I mean, like the first thing he gets there, and he's talking to the guy, and he's like, "Okay, there's a lot of cameras around here, so you better get back to work." And meantime, he's like sitting in the field, like writing a note, tying it to the rat, sending the rat back. Like, it's interesting. But now, like, they have this system of blue rope and yellow rope, so they don't have to like send the rat back and forth anymore.
Right, and like the rope is just sitting there hanging in the pipe. So hopefully, when the landscaper comes by, he doesn't accidentally weed whack off the rope, and then it's like, "Hey, where's the piece I need to pull?"
Be like, "Remember that $10,000 I gave you? Yeah, I'm gonna need that back."
That was probably my favorite. Call this number and you get some cash.
That's the third time they've done that in this show.
Oh my gosh.
The third time he said, "Call this number and you'll get money." Like, that simple.
Well, hopefully I'm shoveling snow today. I can go out there and find some piece of paper laying on the ground that says, "Call this number." And I'll send you a crew to shovel it for you.
My favorite thing because I get Chinese food all the time. And like, I'm always waiting when I open the fortune cookie for like the thing to say, "Help, I'm trapped in a fortune cookie factory." That to be my fortune.
And by the way, the secret numbers are 14, 18, 19, 25. And it's the code in order to get in the door.
I've always waited for that fortune. I can't believe they haven't written that yet.
I love it. Oh, good old Ressler, though. Ressler's still conflicted about Reddington, and he does make for some interesting conversations with Liz. Plus, he plays his best version of Crash Test Dummy. Given Samar was just recently in a head trauma, do you think that putting her in the passenger seat and driving into a car was really a smart idea there, Ressler?
Right? Hasn't she been through enough? Like, put her in a helmet, when she goes out in the field driving with Ressler. No, it was funny, too, because Ressler, like, he seemed to do, like, the Jedi mind trick on Liz. I feel like he's working Liz. Like, he knows something's up with her.
Yeah, I guess I could kind of see that. He's sitting there going, "Oh, okay, well, if you're going to go take care of your thing, I guess I'll go take care of my thing." And I love how she has to make a perfectly honest explanation for it. If we don't forget, not too long ago, you had Ressler who was kind of doing the same thing. Ressler's like, "Oh, I can't do that right now. I got to go take care of this guy because he's blackmailing me for killing Hutchins." So you think that he'd be more understanding. And it almost seems like, I don't know if the writing has not picked up on that, or for me, I think that the fact that nobody else knows in the task force at this point, 4 or 5 episodes in, I think that is the interesting part. I thought that at least Ressler would know by now, so they could share the dynamic and work together.
Yeah, I mean, you would think so. I mean, last year she did her own thing, with the doctor and like all that stuff. She was like, when she was trying to find Tom's killer, she was doing her own thing behind the task force, as well. So I think like Ressler's gotten on to this thing. He's like, something ain't right. Like last week, she kind of was accusing me of turning Red in, when after all these years, you would think, okay, like he gets it. But she's, I think he's on to her. I think he knows something's up with her.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. 2 weeks from this week.
It's going to be good.
Well, apparently Aram loves oatmeal cookies and his 4K TVs. But word of advice, if you're buying a new TV for Super Bowl Sunday coming up here around the corner, just make sure it doesn't have a webcam built into the TV.
Or if it does, put some duct tape over the camera portion because it can be activated by anyone, anytime, anywhere.
But you have to use black electrical tape, though. Otherwise, the duct tape would stand out. It ruins your viewing experience.
Oh, I don't care. As long put anything over it. I don't trust anybody. My webcam has a cover on it. I don't trust anybody.
That's true.
People got me freaked out. All you tech people.
Oh my gosh. I don't know why they would put webcams in the, I mean, it makes sense, I guess, but everything's going smaller screen, right? You got the Facebook portal and the Google video home thing that grandma wants to see all your pictures and the Echo show and all that.
That's kind of the appeal to it now is just, everything, because every TV has a web browser and you can do anything on a TV that, you can do on a computer. So eventually our computers are going to be TVs. It's going to be split screen where you're going to have Windows on one side and TV on the other.
That's already my TV.
See, that's where it's going.
I'm sitting here typing up the document to prep for the show, and I'm watching the Blacklist over on the other side of the screen. So
I knew that's where it's going.
Works out well. Yeah, but not much from Aram this week. Hopefully we get a Aram-centric episode here soon. Hopefully out in the field, because that's when Aram's always fun, right? Dressing up in either the yellow hazmat suits or doing all the fun stuff, shooting rail guns. Yeah,
I mean, he did his little Aram quips and, his tech guy stuff. But I did like how he stood up for Samar. He got to protect his woman.
Well, someone's got to protect her because she is not in a good place right now.
Nope.
When you said, hey, maybe Mossad can buy the device back, I'm like, oh, yeah, Levi's coming back in this episode. That's awesome. Nope, she just decided to do it herself. And then she's doing the whole deal. It's going down. The Chinese show up and it goes sideways. Her aphasia kicks in and she dials 119 twice instead of 911. Do you think that if she ends up getting 911 correct, Delaine might have had a fighting chance?
I don't know. I don't even think they touched on that, aspect of it, because when she was reading on the computer, like all the signs and symptoms of aphasia, it didn't seem to me like she felt guilty for, her dying. Like she got shot, like mortally shot, or fatally shot. So I don't know if that really factors into it, but, I'm kind of concerned, but I don't know where.
Or she can't remember that she didn't dial it the wrong way. I gotta go tell her now that his wife just died, and she's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't remember if one of the symptoms are you start lack of empathy. With aphasia.
I didn't look it up to get all the details on it, but it'll be interesting to see how it progresses. And does that make it that Samar might not be on the show much longer?
That's what I was thinking too, is that now she's realizing that, she's regressing or progressing as far as aphasia goes. Will she share it with Aram? Will she share it with the task force? Is this the beginning of the end for her on the show? It kind of feels that way for me.
Well, and you have to really take into account too, what is the motive, or that motive's not the right word, but you know what I mean? Like, she's such a stoic character to begin with.
Right.
And because she's such a stoic character to begin with and doesn't let people in, her telling Aram right away seems like that would go against the character in a way, because it seems like she'd hold on to this until it's truly something that causes an issue. And then once it causes an issue, then it comes out like, oh, hey, I guess I have aphasia.
Yeah, I think it's, part of it might be, her character backstory, because if you remember, her parents were killed when she was young. And so she kind of raised her brother. Her brother turns into a bad guy, a terrorist or whatever. And she kind of had to grow up real quick. So she's been on her own. She joined Mossad, so she's been that kind of person. I don't know if she ever really had too much, empathy. Look, she turned her brother over to Red. No matter what he does, you don't turn him over to Red. You knew he was going to be killed.
True.
So we'll see.
Well, how fast do you think that progresses? Is that like an 8-episode thing? Is that kind of drawn out over the whole 22 episodes of the season?
I don't know if it goes that far, because I thought that at some point this season we would have their wedding. What's the point of them waiting and dragging that on? So I thought we would have a Samar Aram wedding. But with this going on, I don't see her being long for this show.
I don't know. We'll have to wait and see.
She can't do her job, that's for sure.
True. Liz, he just kind of drives around, doesn't do much this week except repeats a lot of words.
words.
Hands. Help.
She's running up the stairway. They're trying to be covert, and she's screaming into the walkie-talkie, and she's like, "We're coming up the west stairwell." Okay, Ressler's got an earpiece in, so he doesn't hear anything, so nobody else hears anything, but she's screaming in the stairwell. I'm like, oh god.
It was such a funny sequence. Oh my gosh. But she said Red looks weak. So is she obviously knows that Red has done good things, and she knows that this person has cared about her in one way or another, even if it's completely set her life in a different direction than it was ever intended. But she says he looks weak and starting to have feelings for him, I guess, in a way. And then you have the whole Liz trying to bond with Jennifer. We have each other. It's not enough, but I think it has to be.
Yeah.
That's why I'm like, that line was such BS that I think she's totally playing her.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of did seem a little bit forced there, but the whole thing with Liz, she's become that character that, you know, it used to be the I hate you, I love you, I hate you kind of thing with her and Red. I think she's cut off part of her emotions with Tom dying and all that stuff to the point now where she's like, okay, I'm going to play Red. I need to find out. But she's into, I need to know who this man is, knowing that he's not real Red. And Jennifer's like, I don't really necessarily care who he is. We need to trace his backstory so I can find out who he is. So I want to kill him. So they kind of have different agendas with it. But I thought that initially that Liz was just really desperate to be part of like a family dynamic, you know, kind of thing, because it was just really her and Sam as far as she remembers. But I don't know where they're going to take it with her. You can't tell whether she's sincere or not. It's really weird. She's definitely changed like a whole 180 degrees from the character we saw initially with her.
Yeah, and she said, hey, I can't do it right now. But then she ends up saying, oh, yeah, I'll come help you, no problem. So it seems like she genuinely cares about Jennifer. But I feel like there's something else under the surface. But, you know, that's just me. I have the weird and crazy theories, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, which episode was it? The second one after like she turns him in, the third one when she turns him in, and then she's really having like pause for the cause, and she's like, but he's really not a bad guy. Like he may do bad things, but he's not necessarily a bad guy. And I was like, wait, does she not realize everything Red does benefits Red? Even though they're getting rid of these bad guys, it's benefiting him in the end.
And it's like literally set her life on a particular course from day one.
Right. And he told her, I'm going to make you famous.
Oh, my gosh. All right. Well, we have the Coop then. Coop is working with Sophia Quayle, played by the Donna Murphy. Realizes Sophia doesn't work for the NSA. She's actually working against it. Cooper actually breaks some more rules by reading the information on the drive. But is this breaking of this rule okay in your book?
I don't see any rule that he won't or could break that would do anything different, because it seems like it's turned the corner and it falls under the premise of the ends justify the means. Seems to be the credo for the task force now. So, this week Sophia, was hanging with Mr. Cooper, but he was all business and playing hardball.
Yeah, I love the fact that he actually decided that, man, something smells like a rat here. And I guess going back to the question of the gun and the probable cause conversation we had last week, I would say that this would be probable cause that he could actually scan the drive and see what's on there and see what the up and up is with Sophia. So I really love the fact that Sophia ended up being the twist in the government, and that whole concept keeps on going. At the same time, I love Donna Murphy as an actress, so hopefully this isn't the last time we see of her, but I think it might be.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of knew it right away once she's on the phone and she's like, it's me, put me through. And I was like, okay, she's not calling somebody in the government, so she's not a good person on this. Every time somebody walks into that bunker, it was the Bond chick who was Donna Moss on West Wing.
Right.
You had the director. Anybody who comes in there is not a good person. I don't know what it is, aside, from Pennebaker. And I'm not sure about her either.
Jury's still out on Cynthia. We'll see what happens there. Oh, my gosh. But Red, the last one, Red. I am the lion after all. Fear is a liar. It activates the enemy. All we can do is what we can do. What do you think of this little pep talk he gives?
I thought it was just succinct and to the point, because that's really what it is. You can't be afraid of anything. He's learned that from 30 years on the run, no matter who he is. But when you assume the identity of Red Reddington, you kind of know what you're in for, when you start becoming the concierge of crime. So he doesn't fear anything. He always figures a way out of it. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievably written and delivered by Spader, how he's always able to figure a way. Even in prison. He's in prison, for God's sake, and he's still figured a way out.
I think it just comes from years of watching MacGyver, maybe.
But I don't understand. He's been doing this for the government for 5 years. All of these blacklisters, all of these things. Forget the things that he's done to get there and all that stuff. But after 5 years, he still has to prove his worth.
Well,
what's up with?
You got to keep your appearances with your agreement, right? If you're not delivering on the agreement, then that makes the agreement null and void, and they can prosecute him for all the other stuff he did 20 years prior.
You put me in jail. Like, how do you expect me to still continue to do all this stuff from jail? You cut me off from the outside world.
Correction, he cut himself off since he was the one that requested he be put in Gen Pop. So I thought that was an interesting nugget, because we're all like, we said that last week, why would they put him in Gen Pop? That seems like so dumb to keep him safe. And here, if we find out this week that it was actually Red who requested it.
Right. You would think, because that was my first thought. Anybody of his status, wouldn't go into general population. Look at Whitey Bulger. Look at what just happened to him.
Right.
In the real world. So Red has to go into Gen Pop because, again, it falls back on when we first started the show. He needs to keep up appearances. So a criminal like Red, if he's, in protective custody, they're like, oh, well, what's up with him? He must be working for the government. Maybe he's turning state's evidence or whatever. In Gen Pop, hey, this is Red Reddington. We all fear him now.
And I suppose it's a good life lesson that we can all take, too, about this whole we can only do what we can do, and fear is a liar and it activates the enemy. I mean, when you're worrying about what happens tomorrow and not worrying about what you can take care of today, I mean, that's where, depression and doubt step in. So good life lessons all around this week from Red.
Exactly.
Well, we have the Azapalapa and Baldomero sequence. Apparently, he didn't like Red and his mom hanging out in his bedroom together. His bedroom. So creepy.
Oh, story time with Red. This time it took a weird turn.
Oh my gosh. But the best part about this, though, was the entire sequence when he's like, hey, where are you going to go when you get out of prison? And Baldomero's, I'm going to the Blue Lounge. Like, didn't we just learn, don't tell people where you're going to be, because that's how you get in jail in the first place?
Right. And especially a man of Red Reddington's status. But wait, I was curious about one thing. I forgot to bring this up before.
Sure.
When they fingerprinted him, because they show him in the open, he's walking in, they take his mug shot, they fingerprint him. Okay, so if he had plastic surgery and he's somebody else, you can't change your fingerprints.
Well,
you could take them off.
I'm hoping that in some point in time here in season 6, maybe if we get a season 7, that we get somebody called like the fingerprint master, because that is the one thing that's been bothering me since the beginning of the show, because they did fingerprint him in the pilot. And it's like, if they try to match Reddington then either A, there has to be a blacklister that changes fingerprints, or there has to be a blacklister that can hack APHIS in order to change the records in APHIS in order to make sure that whatever prints were fingerprinted in the pilot match the system to say this was Raymond Reddington, since we know he's an imposter now. So that answer has to come out. That is a huge nugget and a loophole in the show right now for me anyway.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen the plastic surgeon in Andrew Dice Clay. So the plastic surgery is there. We saw the doctor, a couple of weeks ago. So, okay, we know that he can do that. We've seen how they can, alter DNA, and genetics, on the show. So, okay, that's covered. But unless he's wearing fake fingerprints, like they cut his off and put on new ones, like you can't fake that. That's supposed to be the point of fingerprints, that everybody's are different.
Right. That's why I think you definitely need a blacklister that does. The blacklister would be cooler if it was the fingerprint switcher. Versus,
that was the
hacking
first thing
APHIS. Hacking APHIS is kind of like a boring storyline, but
right. Because we've seen that already. With him and Jolene.
Right.
He just pops in and finds her. But that was my first thought when I saw him. Like, wait a minute, they fingerprinted him. How are they going to? That should tell them who he is.
Should at least these fingerprints, though, that he got in prison match the fingerprints that are from the pilot. So at least the guy from the pilot is the guy in prison. So you don't have that loophole to figure out.
Right.
And that's now what's in APHIS. So at least from that perspective, this is Raymond Reddington to the rest of the world.
Yeah, and he's been doing it for 30 years. So, but yeah, eventually it'll come out. It has to.
Right, so we're talking about Baldomero saying, hey, I'm going to be at the Blue Lounge. Red goes on this whole speech exactly how he's going to die, gurgling on his blood, laying on the floor, nobody to find you. And then he carries it out that exact way. That is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, do you think he wrote this long descriptive note to Dembe, like, okay, here's what you do. Call this guy, tell him to do this, find him in the bathroom, stab him, gut him, make him gurgle. Like, did he write this whole thing out for the guy?
Yeah, I mean, that was just good writing on that part. That was fun. I love to see.
Oh, yeah.
I love to see that it played out that way.
And it was hysterical. Like, not only did Red sleep with his mom, but he slept with his mom in his bed. Like, couldn't gone anywhere else. And by now, okay, the guy's been around for 30 years. Everybody, whenever you go anywhere in this show, whenever Red shows up, they're like, they know who he is. So shouldn't they know you never get the best of Red? He's been doing this for 30 years. You're not going to beat him. In jail, anywhere, I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're in a cave somewhere, exploring. You're not going to get the best of Red.
And if you're going to do that in the bedroom, I mean, could you at least put the picture, lay the picture of the guy down and flat? I mean, gross. Gross.
Right. Well, it was dark, and he was drunk in his defense.
Well, Red also talks more about caves, if you remember the Mexican fish story. So he's talking about William Floyd Collins. And now, of course, we all know that William Floyd Collins passed away in real life. So you kind of knew where the story was going. But just the way that he told the story, like hooking poor Vontae, he's like, oh, yeah, what happened? He's like, oh, he died.
Yeah, he's like giving him hope, he's like building him up, and then he's like, oh, yeah, he died. Exposure, it's like, okay.
Man, Red can definitely, he's just so captivating. You're totally into the story. It's like, wait, didn't the guy die? And he's like, oh, yeah, he died.
Yeah. I mean, he's got a story for every situation that he's in. And it's amazing because, you probably think half of them are, BS, but, he's usually like he's building somebody up. And it's like, oh, he died. Wait, that doesn't really give me much hope or confidence now.
But I think this is the more interesting line of the entire episode when he's having this conversation. And I believe it was with Liz, right? He said, life is often surprising and death even more so. So I had to sit there and go, there has to be deeper meaning in this line here, because this is usually when Liz and Red have these conversations. This is where you have some deep meaning in the show or some connection or, hey, we're giving you an answer, but you don't know you're getting an answer kind of thing. So do you think that this was a reflection on either the deeper meanings on Raymond's death, the original Raymond Reddington, or Katarina's death, if she's actually dead? What did you make of this, what do you want to call it, words of wisdom, if you will, from Red?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely saw it as something that has a deeper meaning because, death has played a role on the show between Liz faking her death, Tom dying, so we've seen that already. And it reminded me when Red was looking over the grave when he was talking to Aram.
Yeah, at the cemetery.
Thanking him. It just reminded me that I don't know if it's usually like people that I've read, but that people in like Red's position in the real world, they kind of have that strong connection with death because it could always be waiting around the next corner for them, kind of thing. So I kind of read into it that, like he's saying, like, listen, life, is surprising, but death even more so because you could be walking down the street one day living your life and somebody could just take him out because he's got that kind of, price on his head, as he stated with Angel Garrick, he's like, there's always somebody after me. Kind of thing. So, yeah, I kind of read more into it. Like he's kind of setting her up like, listen, death surprises me, but, don't worry about it.
Yeah, especially, what was it, the last season? Like death is like creeping around me from the corner of every room. So it seems like he's obsessed with it at the same time.
Yeah, because, I mean, you figure like whatever his tie is, whoever we find him to be. I mean, obviously, we've talked about this, that, he has a tie to Dom, to Oleander, that he knows him. He was willing to let this guy not only just take on Raymond Reddington, but be that close to his grandchild, even after he blamed him for Katarina's death. So, there's something there, about him. So he has ties to this whole universe, regardless of whoever he is. He has ties to Katarina, the real Red, like all of these people. So he's watched everybody die.
Yeah, I think when this show ends, that particular line is going to be one that you look back on and go, wow, that was a powerful line. And, at the moment it didn't seem like it, but really at the end of the day, I think that's going to come back and be like, that one, that's the one to hold your hat on.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing with this show that's so amazing about it. I mean, again, 6 seasons in and we're still looking for answers, but it's the whole dynamic. When you go back and do a rewatch like I did over the summer, when you take the information you have now and you go back and rewatch it, there are so many things that make much more sense and become clearer now that you know.
Yeah, definitely. Well, cool. Overall, good episode. I definitely liked it better than last week's, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I did too. I mean, I look at it as somewhat of a filler episode, but there's still so many little nuggets in each episode that's bringing us closer and closer to where the eventual goal is going to be.
I thought the rumor for the upcoming episode was that it was a non-Blacklister number for the upcoming one. I thought I saw that rumor out there somewhere.
We've had which one was it? Wasn't there one once before that wasn't a Blacklister? It kind of just made up a number.
Oh, no, I'm talking like that. Like it's going to be like a Cape May Ruin one where, yeah, even though there was like, what was it, Ariok Kane or somebody like that was,
right.
it was somebody completely different than who we thought it was going to be. No, I think the rumor is after the break, it's a non-Blacklister number episode, like a Kate May or a Ruin or a Requiem.
Interesting. So I wonder how many flashbacks we'll get in that.
I don't know. Should be interesting.
Yeah, I unfortunately caught the coming, next week, or 2 weeks on the Blacklist. I don't like to watch them because they usually mess you up.
Right, exactly. Like Feb 1st. Wait. Feb 1st is in 2 weeks. Got it. Okay.
I guess we'll have to see where they go, but next or 2 weeks episode looks going to be very, very interesting. But we want to take a quick second to say thank you to those of you who support the show by going to patreon.com/theblacklistgsm or anywhere you see the words show the support. You can help make the podcast better by throwing a few dollars, pounds, yen, or whatever in the hat, so to speak. We have different support levels for you, which can get cool rewards like a t-shirt. If you become a task force or syndicate member, you can even get your own official Blacklist number.
Yeah, and by contributing, you help us hit some goals as well, like bringing back the Blacklist Exposed apps, bringing back Red's Rhetoric, since we had to cut that out this season due to the cost to produce it. And if you get us up to the $250 a month goal, we're actually really close in order to bring Red's Rhetoric back. So just a couple more of you at $5 a month would definitely help us hit that goal. So make sure you jump over there to patreon.com/theblacklistgsm.
Absolutely. And every bit of support helps. And we're excited to welcome our first Blacklister, Doug, to the team. Doug will get a podcast t-shirt, a video call with Troy once a month, and his very own official Blacklist number. I kind of want that. In addition, we want to thank you to our syndicate members, Marilyn. Syndicate members get the t-shirt and the monthly call with Troy. Then we have our task force member, Leonie. We get the Blacklist Exposed t-shirt once after being on the task force for 3 months.
Also, shout outs to Kevin, Paulette, Isabel, Nell, James, Michelle, Judy, and Sharon for being amazing special agents for supporting the podcast at the $5 level, as well as Bob and Tori for being podcast super fans, giving Aaron a buck and myself a buck at our $2 level. Thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Again, that's Patreon, Patreon, patreon.com/theblacklistgsm. Fill the fedora and get some awesome rewards for yourself. We will be back with Special Agent Intel right after this.
Hi, I'm Brian.
And I'm Ruthie.
And we host the Star Trek Discovery Podcast, part of the Golden Spiral Media Network.
Every week, we break down each new episode of Star Trek Discovery, a brand new series in the Star Trek franchise, available on CBS All Access in the U.S., Space in Canada, and Netflix everywhere else.
We analyze what happened, what we think will happen, and how the show fits and doesn't fit into Star Trek canon, and go through listener feedback.
You can find us at StarTrekDiscoveryPodcast.com and subscribe to us in Apple Podcasts or the podcast app of your choice.
And join our community. Our Facebook group is at facebook.com/groups/Star Trek Discovery Podcast.
Live long and prosper.
Hello, Garys. This is Susan Blumert. You're listening to The Blacklist Exposed on Golden Spiral Media.
Now it's time to see what all of you thought about this week's episode with our Special Agent Intel segment. First, we got a phone call from Lori in Chicago.
I just had a thought, and I would throw it out there, about the pharmacist. The whole Boston legal thing was phenomenal. And I just keep hoping the ending is going to be that William Shatner and Alan Shore wake up and the whole thing's a dream. I wish. But long story short, as far as the twin theory goes, I believe it's a good theory. I keep going back to Alan Alda Finch, always calling him Ray. Never Red. He always called him Ray. And he was the only one that ever called him Ray. So, for that reason, it gives me a little pause to think that maybe there's a Ray and there's a Red. You know, Redmond and Raymond. So that's food for thought for me. Podcast, Blacklist. Love it, love it, love it. I'd be lost without it because you straighten things out. And you guys are a riot. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Lori, for calling in. You can definitely find the phone number over on the website at theblacklistexposed.com if you'd like to do so yourselves. Wendy said, I really enjoyed this episode. The Blacklist storyline was different and had a twist. So we find out why Red was put in Gen Pop. He had requested it himself and made the perfect sense for his reasoning. Did I sense a little nod to the Green Mile with Red and the Rat? I was waiting for Michael Jackson's Ben to start playing.
That would have cost too much money.
Right. I hope we get to see Vontae in the future, and when Red eventually gets free, he will arrange Vontae's release. Poor Samar. I do hope she doesn't ignore her health troubles for too long. I'm getting the vibe that Liz actually regrets having Jennifer on board in her quest for revenge on Red. So we've been given a date of sorts, alleging when Red visited with the doctor in October of 91, and that of another client around December of 91. Why would Red give Liz the doctor's files in the first place, even though he did delete his own details, when he knows the names on the list are going to be investigated, and they could find a link back to him? Also, do we know if Liz has handed over those files yet to the task force?
I don't think she has.
No, and I think the easy answer is Red obviously gave Liz the files in order to give them to the task force. Red didn't suspect that Liz was going to go digging through them herself.
Or did he?
Possible. Who knows?
Well, Monica said Red is 15 steps ahead of everyone in this episode. So, yes, I think he already knows it's Liz who ratted him out. I don't know if she meant to be funny there or not, but I see what you did there, Monica. Liz seemed to hurt when Jen said having her as a sister is not enough. Yeah, she really wants a family, Liz. I love the Vontae kid. I wonder if he'll end up in Red's army if he gets out. I hate rats, but that was the cleanest sewer rat I've ever seen. I've lost count on how many government-issued black SUVs Ressler has destroyed while working for the task force. That would buy a lot of hair products for Ressler. I don't think he needs any. How many of you went on WebMD, come on, be honest, and looked up aphasia to see if there's a cure? Gerald Todd Clipper. I don't know, but he looks close enough to be our Red. Brilliant music selection. Come on, February 1st.
Yeah, that I was trying to. It almost looked like the guy in the pamphlet, this Gerald Todd Clipper guy. It almost looked like he was the guy that shivved Baldomero in the bathroom. So I kind of watched that a couple times. It's not the same guy, but it looked like the same guy. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting because they sure stayed on that file long enough for us to be like, we should know who this guy is.
Yeah, I think he's going to come up because obviously they're going to look for him. They're going to find him, and he's going to wind up being some type of criminal. I mean, he's not going to be like, living in Iowa, like, being a farmer.
We did that once. We don't have to go back to Iowa.
We don't have to go back there again.
Oh my gosh. Grace said, I think I enjoyed this Blacklister the most out of all the ones we've seen so far this season. It's a short list, Grace. Come on.
Yeah.
I know sometimes the writers struggle with new concepts, but this one felt fairly different in my opinion. I love how Red handled the situation in prison, and the kid he was hanging out with, Vontae Jones, was so funny. Samar's symptoms are finally coming to light more and more, I feel. Sad because of that. Liz and Jennifer shared a sentimental moment about finding each other, which did not work for me at all and felt very out of character.
Didn't work for them either.
Especially to give up just like that after being so determined to figure out exactly who Red is. I do believe it is only a matter of time before he finds out that Liz made the call that turned him in.
If he doesn't already know. I agree. Well, Susie said, according to my research, Real Red died the night of the fire, which is in December of 89. Katerina disappears 2 months later in early 1990. Another option, although it would not line up with the scripts, would be to say that real Raymond Reddington died the night of the fire, which was on Christmas Eve of 1990. Katerina disappears 2 months later in early 91, and then Fred goes for surgery in October 91. That would mean less of a gap in the timeline, but the previous scripts don't support that.
So a couple thoughts here. One is that maybe it was just a production gaffe, right? And they got the whole, 1998, 1989 whole thing, because I'm pretty sure that the fire in Requiem that we see when Katerina brings Liz to the hotel to Kaplan, like that whole sequence, they said 89 in that episode, right?
Yes.
So walk with me on this one here, but remember, and this is in order to like make my theory work of the whole, that Red Arena is actually the answer. So keep that frame of context. So if Katarina does turn into Red, then you have to play this whole imposter thing out, right? So there's the fire where Raymond dies. Raymond dies in 1989 in Requiem. You dig the bones. You got to figure out where to bury the bones and all that other fun stuff. And she goes to Cape May and she disappears and her body was never found. And so there has to be obviously be time in order to do the transformation and all that stuff or whatever. And then clearly Carla Reddington, right, Naomi, she's in on it. If you go back and watch the front, I think it was the front when that episode that she was in back in season 2, they're clearly in on whatever happened because she knows that Red is not Red in that episode. Right. Very clear in the dialogue. So in 1990, when Raymond Reddington, the original Raymond Reddington, doesn't show up on Christmas Eve with his family, it's part of the story and part of the plight in order to make this all happen, in order to make it look like he disappeared and was killed or whatever and became the criminal he became. So from that whole sequence, you have to be kind of gone from 1990 to 1991 when he goes through this transformation with Dr. Kohler. So I think there's a way to say that there's two separate incidents. There's the night that Raymond Reddington actually died, which was 89, and then the didn't come home on Christmas Eve, family was all over. That was a staged setup in order to start the whole thing, in order for Raymond Reddington to become the criminal we know today.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely, look, we've had things before where, necessarily things that happen in the pilot or whatever, the timelines might not add up. I mean, they can always change anything to fit the narrative. And they've come so far now. Once it's laid out, it's going to make complete sense to us because they've had enough time now in 6 seasons, to correlate the timeline together. But I mean, it is weird too, because if they staged this whole thing, so they brought Carla in, so that whole thing about him not coming home for Christmas and all that was kind of staged and a setup, with it. I was just curious how the Kaplan got involved with burying the real Red's bones. Like, was she at that point already, with Katarina? We don't know that either because that was a long time ago, because Liz was really young. I know she was with her, but was she full-time cleaner at that point?
Yeah, it's a good question. We don't know when that situation occurred, if the bones were buried prior to Kaplan Services coming on, a year after the whole, the Texas incident with Annie, or if there was just information that was leaked out when you start to uncover what's all happening. So,
yeah, I mean, that's the tie that really fits into that whole thing is, where does Kaplan fit into it? She knew where Red was buried, so she must have known the true story as well. And it just goes to that timeline of that everybody who knows the truth or is involved in this is dead.
Right. And because even Dembe only knows whatever the new Raymond Reddington told Dembe.
Right. So and that's the thing, too. That's a big part of it, too. How much does Dembe really know? Because it's always been intimated by him that he knows everything and that Red should tell Liz, about it. So how much does Dembe really know?
It's a good question. Good questions. Well, and I'll play the part of Aaron here for this week, but that whole concept of the 89 and setting and staging up the 1990 disappearance and the fire and all of that stuff, that could apply for any, even if this is like C. Duke or somebody else or a twin or uncle or whatever, the same concept would apply. But I definitely think that we have to remember that we're looking at an imposter, and because we're looking at an imposter, that anything that we think is a fact could in fact be a staged event in order to make the imposter concept, carry on and do its thing.
Right. And what it goes back to? It goes back to when Red, or whoever he is, bought that house that he blew up. We all wondered, wait, whose house was that? Whose family was that? Yeah. So was that the real person behind Reddington's house?
And when he goes to the play in Swan Lake, the whole thing, maybe that's just appearances. Maybe that doesn't mean anything. It's what the old Raymond Reddington used to do. So he has to do some of that stuff in order to keep up the character.
Or it's completely something that ties to the imposter who's playing Red. It ties to him personally.
Right, exactly.
So it'll be interesting to see once it all unfolds. But it's going to be one of those things that once the linchpin is gone, whatever that one is, which I still think always has been in the Night of Fire, whatever that is, and the dominoes start falling, I don't think that this show is going to let us down. It's whichever way it falls, it's going to make complete sense, and it's going to just be mind blowing. That's my opinion of it.
I can't wait. It's going to be great. Great ride. Great ride.
I can't wait either. It's going to be amazing. Well, that will conclude this episode, but be sure to follow us on Twitter at the Blacklist GSM, where we live tweet during the East Coast feed when possible, and we use the show's hashtag, The Blacklist.
Don't forget to follow us on Tumblr, Instagram, and join the Facebook group. Just search for The Blacklist Exposed over there on Facebook. Talk about the show, the podcast, or your favorite kind of lunch meat.
Which is not pimento loaf. But you can also subscribe to our show in Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and now Pandora, or from your favorite podcast player of choice. You can even listen from the website, plus find all the intel and analysis about this episode for the Pawnbrokers by visiting theblacklistexposed.com. Big thanks for listening. Don't forget to answer our profiling question. Fill in the blanks. What happened between Christmas 1990 and October of 1991?
Yeah, I'd love to hear your theories, and you got 2 weeks to put those together. So we'll see you back here Super Bowl weekend.
Yes.
All right. Have a good one, guys.
See ya.
Until next time, I'm Agent Troy Heinritz. That's at Troy Heinritz on Twitter. And if you want to learn more about me, just visit, about.me/Troy Heinritz.
And I'm Agent Aaron Peterson. You can hear me talking about movies and TV on the Hollywood Outsider podcast, as well as Remake This Movie Right. We are available at thehollywoodoutsiders.com or on Twitter at 5popcorn. Be sure to subscribe, download the app, submit your feedback, but most importantly, keep yourself off of
The Blacklist.
The Blacklist Exposed is a Golden Spiral Media production. Find more of our great podcasts at goldenspiralmedia.com/podcasts.